Hello everyone, this is Shelly K coming to you from my kitchen table. It is a big mess other than the area that you see here. And I'm going to go over 4 fringers that I have in my possession at the moment. This is a Paplin's brand fringer that I bought about 17 years ago, and it was like $75 then. This is Lake City Crafts, which is no longer in business. Well, neither is Paplin. And it was purchased some time ago, and it belongs to my friend Ramona. And she's not sure how much she paid for it because it was a gift to her. We're guessing upwards of $60 or $70 for sure. This is a brand off of Amazon. It was $78. And this is the one from Hunter Creek Crafts, and it was $124. Let me give you the background. This is the one that I've had for many, many years, and it has served me well, but it is very temperamental. Every one of these fringers has similar but different adjustments and ways to change their cut and depth and width. Like I said, this one has served me well, but it has become nearly impossible, and I will demonstrate that in a little bit. This one I'm not as familiar with. I've just been borrowing this one for the last couple weeks from Ramona. We decided it doesn't have the same adjustments that the Paplin's one does. Like I said, they're similar, and I'll get into that adjustments in a minute. Since I knew this one was failing on me, or I was tired of dealing with it, I looked into buying a new one from someplace. This is the one I decided on from Amazon. The price was right because it was slightly lower at $78. There was another one I was looking at on Amazon. It was red, it was smaller, more like this style, in plastic. It had terrible reviews, and it was only like $20. So I'm guessing you got what you paid for on that one. There was a really interesting looking fringer called a safety fringer out of someplace in Australia. It was $125 Australian, plus another 20 some dollars if it was going to be shipped to the US. It looked very promising because the blade was enclosed. They called it a safety fringer. It seemed to have good reviews. Only drawback was it's so far away. Well, then I ended up with this one from Hunter Creek, because this one from Amazon literally broke within a day, 1 day of receiving it. I only fringed 10 to 12 strips, and the handle broke off. So I'm right now in the process of having this returned to Amazon. I have a couple more days to get it to the UPS store. So that is going back to wherever it came from. And then in the meantime, I purchased this one from Hunter Creek, and it seems to be the best out of all of them so far. I'm still not super familiar with it. I've only had it a couple days. But let's go over the features on all of these, and I will try them out and show them one by one. So let's go back to the original. This Paplin's fringer from, like I said, 17 or so years ago. You feed the paper in this side. You can adjust the width of the paper by changing this slide spacer. It has to go under this little wire, and under this arm, and under this guard to get to the blade. Then you can start cutting. The arm here is what advances the paper. This little wire guide keeps it flat, I guess. That seems to be what is very temperamental. The adjustments that can be made on this are this screw at the top, and by changing that just, I mean, incrementally into minimal millimeters, it changes the width of the cut. Then there was a very, 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 very tiny Allen wrench that was given, or brought with this product, which I have long lost. And I believe I remember it goes into this adjustment, and no, it was this one. It went right down into there, and there's a little set screw in there, and the tiniest little adjustment would change the depth of the cut. That, to me, on all of these, the depth of the cut is not always the important thing. As long as you've got enough end that's not cut to roll it, glue it, and it's not falling apart, that's fine. It doesn't need to be super, super deep. It's the width of the petals that I always adjust the most. So let's see if I can get this thing working. So your paper has to go under the first guide, then stopped with that little stopper. Now here comes the hardest part. You need like 3 more hands somehow to lift the wire and lift it under the arm and then under the guard. All right, so I've got it coming out here at the end. Now here's I'll tell you what's gonna happen. I predict this was what's gonna happen. It's been happening for a long, long time. It'll cut 4, 5, 6 nice cuts, and then it'll stop feeding, and you can feel it recutting the same little bit again and again. So I don't know what I adjusted this to, so I'll just leave it where it's at. All right, I predict I'm gonna cut 5 or 6, or I don't know, and then it'll stop feeding. All right, see, it's already stopped cutting on me. I made it through just this much, like not even a ½ inch, maybe a millimeter, and it's stopped cutting. It's not advancing. So what I do is I give it a little tug, and then it keeps going again, and then it stopped. I give it a little tug, and it keeps going. Ooh, here's a good one. And it stopped. And that's the pattern that it gives me, is go a little, stop a little, go a little, stop a little. It's very frustrating. Let's keep going with it. Let's change the width. And so far so good. Well, that's amazing. That has not happened in a very long time, but you did see at the beginning there that it would cut and stop and cut and stop. So far, so good on that. Let's adjust the width again. I keep making the width a little thicker, a little thicker. This one's very noisy compared to the other ones. Well, I am... Of course, it's on video. I'm shocked that it's worked as well as it has so far. To cut that wide of a fringe for you. This one's a little thinner, and this was the thinnest that I was doing when it was really messing up for me at the beginning. Let's finish this strip off and see if it dies out on me. Now, when it gets to the end and it has nothing else to advance, it'll just kind of flop and stop. I am pleasantly surprised that it did so well. It just occurred to me, maybe on the finer cuts, that's when it gets stopped up more. Let's try that again on finer cuts and see what happens. I have no idea how long this video is going to be. I want to go through these thoroughly because it seems to be one of those mysteries of quilling that not everybody understands, the fringers, and how, I think, how temperamental they can be. All right, so it has fed through on the blade side. I still have it on the wide fringe setting. Let's start cutting. Now, had that been that tiny little fringe, I'm sure it would have messed up and stopped cutting on me. So let's go back to tiny fringe. You've got to be kidding me. Although it cut up, it stopped right there. And it's not advancing anymore, so I give it a little tug. And it stopped on me again. So as I'm doing this video review, I made a revelation that when it's a thicker, wider fringe cut, this one does not bind up as much. It's those thin cuts that it does. However, I like those thin cuts. When you're looking at the difference between, you know, the way that some of these fringe flowers look, I like that finer fringe. This one is okay too. On the really wide cuts, I like to make like the Grubera daisy type. Let's continue, let's move on. All right, so this Paplin's one, I'm not gonna get rid of it. It's been around forever. Apparently it still works on those wider widths. Let's move on to the Lake City that is from Ramona. Now these take, you know, actual screwdrivers and tools to adjust. I'm using a 3/8 inch wide. Well, that's not going in, is it? Oh yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. A 3/8 inch wide paper. And then this is supposed to kind of stop and butt up against the paper, I guess. Tighten that back down a little bit. And it's not even touching it. That is the weirdest thing. Okay, so then this one goes through. This one also has the little wire arm and then the feeding arm. It has this green disc here, which is like a plastic, not the metal steel. And that's somehow, you know what, mine has something like that too though, now that I'm thinking about it. It's just not green, so I don't think about that. All right, this one, we're gonna feed it through. You gotta get it under the wire, and then under the arm, and then under the guard, until it starts coming out on the blade side. When I was with Ramona a couple weeks ago, she was telling me that this Fringer has no adjustment for depth or depth of cut or width of the fringe pieces, which I said, it's gotta have something. It looks so much like mine. What these Fringers do is this whole arm mechanism goes up and down, and depending on how far up and how far down it goes, the far up it goes, the more paper advances under, that gives you the wider cut. And mine is clear to see because it has that nut and screw at the top. This one had nothing. It had a little post here, and when the arm came up to that post, that's as far as it went. That's as wide or as narrow as your fringe could get. So we said, well, what if we put something under that little arm, and then the whole mechanism won't take up and down as far, and you'll have a finer fringe. So we started playing around with that, and we just taped a piece of quilling paper that kind of zigzagged back and forth there, so that we just had a little bit of space there. And a little goes a long way on the adjustments of these fringers. So we started cutting with hers, and it was very nice, much more quiet. Very, very even, did not bind up at all. I'll see if I can do it sideways like this. And it's still going, it's not binding up. So my review of this one is it works pretty well. Like I said, it's not mine, so I'm not gonna be able to keep it and go with it. That's why I wanted to purchase one of my own, a new one that worked better than this one did. This one would be fine. If you have the Lake City, great, keep it, go with it. And play around with adjusting the width of your cut. So if I took this little bit of paper out and put it back to kind of its factory setting, now started cutting, that is the width that you get. I don't know how well you can see things like this, but this was the finer cut that we got when we stuck the little yellow paper under there. So this is the standard cut that it is kind of intended to make. And then you can adjust it, apparently, by sticking a little thing under the post. So let's move on to the newest style fringers that I'm not as familiar with. First of all, I thought it was comical. They both came in the exact same, I don't know if it's Chinese, Japanese, Asian, with some Asian countries writing, exactly the same. The insides was the same, and they both came with this adorable little wrench that I don't even know what goes to, because nothing on it uses like a wrench. There are a few, hex pieces here, but I don't even know why that would need to be adjusted, because this screw at the top adjusts the length. Yes. No. I don't remember. Let me play with it. One is the width, one is the depth of cut, and one is the width of each fringe cut. So the broken one still works. It's just that it doesn't have this, nice comfort handle. You can move it from here, and it just hurts your fingers. It's broken. I don't want it. It's broken. So let's take a look at this one. It's got a lot more mechanisms, arms and wires, nuts and bolts on the sides and back of this one. Some of them seem over-engineered or an afterthought, or they just kept experimenting and they're like, okay, that'll work. So you've got your main arm that will cut here. It has a much longer cutting area, so you can do way wider width paper. I'm guessing up to 3/4 of an inch maybe. It has a textured rolling wheel here. That is what advances and keeps that paper down. This is my favorite feature on any of the fringers, actually, any of the fringers. This slide arm is what adjusts the width of the paper. So you slide that in, you can feel it stop, You don't need a screwdriver because it's got grips on the edge of that screw, and it is a lot more secure. It's got a nice groove there where it channel fits in there. This is the best guide adjust that I've seen on all 4 of these. Then it has to go under the rolling wheel here, and it has a kind of a release mechanism underneath. You roll it through or push it through, and then that's it. It comes out towards the end there, and it's ready to be cut. I'm not even sure what width or depth this is at. It's pretty fine. So let's play around with some of its adjustment features. There's 2 screws here that adjust 1 depth, 1 width. Off the top of my head, I don't remember which is which. So I'm gonna move this one a tiny bit and see what change it made. I can't tell what change it's made. I'm gonna keep screwing it. It's getting wider, I think. No, that's the depth. That is the depth of the cut. I'm gonna pull this through a little bit so maybe you can see it. Here is where the end of the fringe is there. It goes down a little and then even finer a little. I'll bring that up to the camera. That's how deep the cut went. Like I said, deep is not the... Now that one's almost to the, that one's almost to the very edge. Like that would cut it off. I'm just gonna stop that. That's about where I need it to be. I mean, I don't think it needs to be too thin. I mean, it can be about 1/8 of an inch, maybe, I don't know, smaller than that. But not too much. Now this one adjusts the width of the cut. So let's play with that one. So I have to kind of move that back a little and then turn this screw either deeper or more shallow. That's very, very fine cut. So the deeper it goes in, it seems to be hurting, like that hurts holding that because there's no handle. That is a very fine cut right there. A very fine cut. Let's go the opposite way. So screwing it in deeper was finer, so let's go back it up a little bit. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And you've got a wider cut, a wider fringe there. I'm not sure how well you can see these things. I'm not a super audio-visual ace. So that's the basic gist of that one. I liked it. It worked until it broke the handle off. I could have possibly just returned it and got another one, but I don't want to take that chance of it breaking again. When this one looked really nice too, and on the website, on the Curtis Hunter website, little blurb said that they've kind of searched high and low to find the best quality fringer to put on their website. It's just funny to me that they're in the same box. They're so similar, but yet not. So this best one here, the newest one that I've got, the Hunter Creek, has way less mechanisms to get the arms to move. Like this one has a tall arm here, a second arm here. It's got wires that something there. I mean, everything, this moves to this, that moves to this. It's got a lot going on. This one, just an arm. And then the two adjustments are at the top here. So I'm gonna go ahead and say this one is the superior model. It's the most expensive model, but it's worth it, I'm gonna say. So let's do a little look through this one. It does have a similar guide feature here with the screw that, and then the paper comes in and out. However, I'm not sure if you can even see it. It kind of has one tab up, one tab down to hold the paper above and below or at the edge. This one worked fine, and this one I'm sure will be fine enough. I really liked the channel lock one on that one. Moving on. Whoa! I have a terrible setup here. I've got my husband's golf tripod. Sorry, I'm not gonna recut that and edit it. Wow, caught it though, caught my iPad. I've got my husband's golf tripod here that he uses for his simulator, and we've got it all compact and bent down, and it apparently is very top heavy. So let me not bump that again. All right, we're almost done here. We'll slide that one in, get this guide right to the edge of it, edge of the paper, tighten it. I'm tightening it just by hand. I don't feel the need to crank it with a screwdriver, long as it's got freedom to move, okay? Then there's two knobs here. There's a white one on the back and the front. That's what lowers the under wheel, like a rubbery wheel that feeds through this textured roller, and then the paper guides through, and you can see it coming out there on the other end. And then you start cutting. Another thing that I've always found awkward or difficult with fringers is, where do you hold them while you're fringing them? With the smaller ones, I sometimes would just hold it in my hand like this. I would keep it flat or do that, and then your fingers kind of get fatigued and wear out there. This one has just sharp angles everywhere, and I didn't know where to exactly hold this one, but it worked. This one I quite like. It's got this large flat angle here, and even the corners are rounded off, so I can kind of keep my fingers there without it poking and pinching too bad. So cut, nice and quiet. Very smooth. Now let's do some adjustments. And I never remember which one is which because I don't know it yet very well. The first screw I'm gonna move here, I'm gonna move it down a little bit, and I think that is depth. Depth of cut. No, yes, no. No, that's the width. It got really fine. Really fine there, which is beautiful actually. So let's go the other way. And now we've got it really, not really, but pretty thick. So you can see right here, it is super fine. Over here, it's definitely chunkier. I hope you can see that from here at least. Then the second screw is the depth of the cut. And like I said, I don't find the need to mess with that one too much. I barely turned that, And here, I'll show it to you. Here was my cut before, and then I barely turned it, and that's how deep it cut that way. Like, there's my little fringe, choo, 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 and then this big old wasted spot. There may be a need for that. There may be a certain project you're doing, but let's, oh, look at that. It's so far that it's just cutting them into like an actual paper cutter, into pieces. Each one's fringing off. I mean, if you needed some sprinkles, confetti, that might work. So a dab will do ya with the adjustments here. Now it's back to like really, okay, there we go. I'm gonna have to write myself a note. Don't mess with this one. You see, that's too deep. So if you have a fringer, you're gonna have to play around with it and see where you're at. Because I went from here to here and then way too deep and then back to normal. So that depends on what you feel comfortable with. I always think the further it is up there, the easier it's just gonna, tear apart, especially if you're manipulating it a lot or when you're rolling it too tight, it may just fall apart. Let's do one more thing, one more flower, and call it a review. I could also go through and show you the 1/4 of an inch, paper, or something wider or something smaller. I'm not so sure that's necessary because it's really about the depth and the width of the cut. It's not about the width of the paper, in my humble opinion. So let's make this a little finer. Yeah, I like that. Now I'm just gonna cut, and then we'll roll it up and see what these flowers look like. This one feels so much more, I'm shaking everything, aren't I? This one feels so much more secure and strong in the arm than this broken one did. This one just feels, you can almost hear it has mechanism when it's cutting. This one, up and down, up and down. And it feeds so well with that textured roller. I'm sorry I'm shaking everything because everything's on the table here. But it feels really good. It's not binding up like my original one does. That still is a funny revelation that my original one binds up more when it's narrow width cuts. I'll have to tell my husband that because we have been playing and toying with that thing for years. Like, hey, can you take this apart and adjust this wire? Can you see what this thing does? Because there's really no instructions with a lot of these. You get them out of the box and then it doesn't tell you what to do. All right, so I've cut that whole strip. Where did I start the best width? Okay. And then there's always gonna be a little bit of waste at the end because it stops where that barrel can't reach it anymore. So, well, let's roll. When you're rolling fringed flowers like this, sometimes, and I don't have to, I like to glue periodically as I roll through. To me, that helps keep the bottom more even because the top is going to naturally fan out because all of the cuts that are in the paper are misshapening it or stretching it out, creating space that wasn't there before. Keep it going, keep it going. Another thing to do when you get to the end of your roll or end of your fringed flower, now this is also going to be dependent on how you're using this flower or what look you might be going for. Some people will glue, I'll just do it right here, the whole bottom end and let that dry, and that'll give it, if you have a nice glue that dries firm, not too flexible, so that when you start fluffing and adjusting your fringe, it doesn't bow out, kind of like you see how that one is bowed out at the end. I can move it. I could, you know, stick it in and glue it, and it depends how you want to use it, but I did not do that on that one. Then you start fluffing from the outside edges out and around, all the way around, and there's your fringed flower. Most of you should know that because you're here to see the fringed flower review, the Fringer review. And there we go. All those fringers for one little flower. I hope this has been informative. I know I ramble from time to time. I didn't really plan this out. I just rolled with it. Pun intended, as always. So I hope you guys are doing well, and I would highly suggest you purchase from Hunter Creek if that's a fringer that you're in the market for. Best of luck to you, happy quilling, and see you next time. Bye.